Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I hope I may say comrades and friends, before your minds, I exempt myself from the Speaker's kind offer of protection that was so generously proffered at the opening of this evening. Anyone who wants to say anything abusive about or to me is quite free to do so, and welcome, in fact, at their own risk. It's not just the right of the person who speaks to be heard. It is the right of everyone in the audience to listen and to hear. And every time you silence somebody, you make yourself a prisoner of your own action because you deny yourself the right to hear something. In other words, your own right to hear and be exposed is as much involved in all these cases as is the right of the other to voice his or her view. Indeed, as John Stuart Mill said, if all in society were agreed on the truth and beauty and value of one proposition, all except one person, it would be most important. In fact, it would become even more important that that one heretic be heard, because we would still benefit from his perhaps outrageous or appalling view. In more modern times, this has been put, I think, best by a personal heroine of mine, Rosa Luxemburg, who said that the freedom of speech is meaningless unless it means the freedom of the person who thinks differently. My great friend John O'Sullivan, former editor of the National Review, and I think probably my most conservative and reactionary Catholic friend, once said, it's a tiny thought experiment, he says, if you hear the Pope saying he believes in God, you think, well, the Pope's doing his job again today. If you hear the Pope saying he's really begun to doubt the existence of God, you begin to think he might be onto something. Well, if everybody in North America is forced to attend at school training in sensitivity on Holocaust awareness and is taught to study the final solution, about which nothing was actually done by this country or North America or the United Kingdom while it was going on, but let's say as if in compensation for that, everyone's made to swallow an official and unalterable story of it now, and it's taught as the great moral exemplar, the moral equivalent of the morally lacking elements of the Second World War, the way of stilling our uneasy conscience about that combat. If that's the case with everybody, as it more or less is, and one person gets up and says, you know what, this Holocaust, I'm not sure it even happened. In fact, I'm pretty certain it didn't. Indeed, I begin to wonder if the only thing is that the Jews brought a little bit of violence on themselves. That person doesn't just have a right to speak. That person's right to speak must be given extra protection, because what he has to say must have taken him some effort to come up with, might contain a grain of historical truth, might in any case give people to think about why do they know what they already think they know. How do I know that I know this, except that I've always been taught this and never heard anything else? It's always worth establishing first principles. It's always worth saying, what would you do if you met a Flat Earth Society member? Come to think of it, how can I prove the Earth is round? Am I sure about the theory of evolution? I know it's supposed to be true. Here's someone who says there's no such thing, it's all intelligent design. How sure am I of my own views? Don't take refuge in the false security of consensus and the feeling that whatever you think, you're bound to be okay because you're in the safely moral majority. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Backstory Podcast, number 112. Have my partner in crime in studio with me today, Mr. Paul Ripp. How are you, Mr. Ripp?
Here with my own opinion.
And Mr. Russian, how are things? You said you all having some weather out there in Houston.
Yeah, battle stations this morning. We had a cool front move through, pushed a little rain, some thunder and lightning, a little hail. possible tornadoes, but I believe we're on the backside of it now.
Headed our way.
Well, it's been a long, strange trip this week. Mr. Rip and I talked to him on Friday, and I said, Paul, was it this past Monday that we went to Montgomery? And he said, yeah, it seems like 3 weeks ago, doesn't it?
Really?
So anyway, and just so an explanation on the intro, it's the 10th, December 15th was the 10th anniversary of the passing of my spirit animal, Christopher Hitchens, whom I had to call on several times this week. Mr. Rip witnessed some of it in Montgomery. I actually had an attorney general tell me that we should have sued on behalf of the state of Alabama if we wanted to maintain our writ of mandamus. Can you imagine anything more laughable? I actually turned around and looked at Paul when he said it.
I thought the standing issue was even, I thought that was, if you're a citizen of the state, you should have standing, period. That should be the end of it, I would think.
Of a bunch of retards I wouldn't trust with a potato gun.
Well, of course, I argued that Mr. Rip was not just some similarly situated individual, that he had actually followed the code and had filed the appropriate paperwork and was asking for very limited relief, not asking. And that was the other thing. This guy just filed a notice of appearance. He filed an updated motion to dismiss and did not argue the original motion to dismiss, which I pointed out to him at the beginning of my argument, and then I took that apart pretty quickly, I thought. So anyway, the judge went from sitting back to leaning forward to damn near falling over the front of his bench, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, I think he threw a couple of facts in there that Attorney General failed to mention, of course.
Right.
And
mentioned Mr. Albritton's involvement or any of the underlying cases and how egregious they were.
And I think you had to remind the Attorney General that we indeed had sent them a complaint of the same issue against Mr. Albritton. And here they are showing up defending him.
Right. So it was me versus, how many was it? 4?
4.
Yeah.
And the ultimate conclusion was?
Well, we are to submit the order that we would like the judge to sign, meaning he wants to know more.
And let me tell you, folks, we've gone a long way with this, a lot further than people thought. So we'll keep you posted on our writ of mandamus and our progress in it.
So we haven't mentioned this yet, but the people of the state of Kentucky and other states, where hundreds of people were killed, right?
Dear God, man. I mean, it's devastating.
Whole towns leveled, and
couldn't even recognize
I thought we
pictures.
should mention it, and so Raines, in the spirit of Operation Barbecue Relief, this dude just drove to the middle of town and started giving away barbecue.
Yeah,
didn't organize or anything.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line. You get up and you get fed. Thankfully, I was fortunate enough to be affiliated with Operation Barbecue Relief, and they're up there on the ground now in multiple sites in Kentucky and Illinois, and they're doing the good work. And it starts. Operation Barbecue Relief started exactly like that. You show up to the Joplin tornado with your cooker, and you start cooking food, and you get it out there, and you deliver the one meal that matters. And hats off to Jim Finch for that.
The devastation was just mind-boggling. Some of the pictures, you couldn't even recognize what the hell you're looking at.
So just when you think it's 2021, it's 1989 again.
Yep.
And Raines, I'll let you take this. You called this a few weeks ago. All I want for Christmas is Ukraine. Terrible.
Yes, sir.
Very fortuitous.
The Russian government has, since the 1950s, been the absolute, in all of their iterations, has been the absolute masters of global brinksmanship. And again, here we are at the table for brinksmanship on a global scale. Russia has amassed what amounts to, in the U.S. conversion, of about 15 divisions of soldiers and armored personnel carriers, tanks, and all the accoutrement of war at the border of Ukraine. They're doing that because they're seeking, and they delivered 2 proposals today. One of them is to demand that no future European countries or anyone within the Soviet Union's sphere of influence be allowed to join NATO. Now, as NATO members, you would originally think, well, that's foolish. We're not going to agree to anything like that. And the White House has absolutely flushed the toilet on it. They said that the United States government is not going to deign to these demands. We're going to admit whoever we want to NATO. it's essentially the same stuff that we sent to the Warsaw Pact in the 1970s that said, we're not going to allow you to just ramrod all these countries into the Warsaw Pact, like Romania and Czechoslovakia and whatnot. And the Soviet Union did it anyway.
Okay, so let's talk a little brinksmanship. So the last time that we were really under threat of global thermonuclear war was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and that was more peacocking so that we would remove the Jupiter missiles from Turkey and where were they? I don't remember. But anyway,
they were mainly in Turkey.
Okay, so that's what I see. This is I don't. Hell, they may destabilize the government and overthrow it. Remember during the Beijing Olympics when we were all cheering for Michael Phelps, they essentially invaded Georgia and nobody said a damn word.
Right.
So
internal security, they call it.
That was during which administration? So, Obama administration.
Okay, you had to throw that in there.
Russia's going to Russia, and
right.
Putin's going to Putin, and this is
classic Obama example. 2.0, man. He knows he can get away with doing whatever he wants to, including destabilizing a government like Georgia or Ukraine.
Well, Vladimir Putin is going so far as to destabilize Europe. Europe has already destroyed itself from within as far as security goes. Brexit alone was completely and totally undermined the economic security of the region. And the Soviet Union, Russia is capitalizing on that. And they're going to make strides to expand. And they are going to take the Ukraine within the next 6 months.
They have the manufacturing capacity of Italy. They're not of course, they have a shit ton of nuclear weapons. We have to take them seriously.
I would.
But I don't see them throwing a bunch of money into the war machine. That's not how Putin and his guys make money.
No, and it's really not. And they fought and won a propaganda war against us during the reign of the 45th president. And that's how proper war is fought these days. They already won that. Now they're capitalizing on a soft Europe. They hold the natural gas of the entire country of Poland and Germany, and they could just shut that off. And
he'd do it too. He'd do it too.
Well, I think the people of Ukraine have a long memory, and when the revolution happened and they went in and threw all the kulak farmers off of their property and gave it to people who had no idea how to farm, they eventually had to put up posters telling people not to eat their children. There was such mass starvation. Every time Russia diddles around in Ukraine, people perish. I think we should support them. Let them join NATO if they want to.
I do too.
Let's have a tank battle. I've been wanting to see one my whole life.
Oh, well, I hope I'm nowhere close.
Speaking of tank battles, I got that out of order, I guess.
Right.
So Gabe did a whole lot better job this week than I did last, explaining exactly what's going to be going on with this 1,200 acre wetland slash spoilage disposal area here just south. Now that's let's say that's Battleship Park right there.
Right.
And right here is that Mexican restaurant. What's it called? Used to be a Tacky Jack's. That's where I got. That's where Lance and I ended up in the kayaks the other day. Little misnavigation on my part. Went all the way across the Delta.
But what Harry's referring to is this week cover story in Lanyap, at what cost public comment period opens for the Port Authority's controversial wetlands project by Gabe Times. I think it's an excellent article. Probably is going to fall on a lot of deaf ears. People around here are not paying attention to what's going on with the environment. You know, that takes us back seat, it seems, all of the time. But this is called a beneficial use of dredge material to create emergent tidal marsh in the upper Mobile Bay. Sure sounds like they know what they're talking about, doesn't it? But the concern is submerged aquatic vegetation, SAV, and that's these small plants and grasses that are growing in, say, 2 to 3 or 4 feet. And what some of the environmentalists are saying that, hey, we need to be in a lot deeper depth in putting this fill material. The other thing, too, that is raised in Gabe's article, which I see in zoning cases and everything else, is that there's always a game played of notification. Who gets notified of what meeting, when, and everything else, you know. And it's the same thing here. Keep in mind, this is a 1,200-acre project. This is a huge project. And the selection is very close to where they're going to be dredging. And that appears to be exactly what they're doing, is trying to locate as close as they can to the dredging. Now, one of the things that you've got everybody coming in now, the Sierra Club, Weeks Bay, et cetera,
Backstory Podcast.
Backstory Podcast, whatnot. But what I thought was interesting in the article was that the Baldwin County Commission and the Baldwin County Legislative Delegation didn't respond to separate requests for comments on this project. Here again, you see a lot of people taking cover, not wanting to be involved in the project. But this is one of those that the public better get involved. You're talking about 1,200 acres.
So Raines, let me recount this public meeting for you, okay? So you see it right here. Talk about a 180. It took 22 minutes Monday for environmental journalist and filmmaker Ben Raines to shift from enthusiastic supporter of the State Port Authority's proposed Upper Mobile Bay wetland creation project to someone calling it idiotic and outrageous.
And I tell you what, I believe Ben Raines.
He left that right in the middle of the floor.
Yeah.
Steaming.
Well, I mean, you know, you would think that these would be the people that they tried to bring into this first, are the environmental groups. But those are the ones that try to keep the door shut on it. I believe Raines far more before I would believe Alabama State Port Authority, I'll tell you that.
So I tried to call the marketing director for the State Port Authority all week. No callbacks, left multiple numbers. I tried to call the Mobile Bay Estuary Program. No callbacks. I tried to call Dauphin Island Sea Lab. And remember, they gave the Environmental Protection Award to the Mobile County Commission just weeks after this cap and place thing happened up at the Berry Steam Plant with the coal ash.
Right.
So I don't know what everybody's playing at, but the idea that there's any kind of environmental protection going on around here is a bunch of bullcrap.
Well, the only there is one little thing that they're trying to do, Harry, and that's take care of that underwater forest. You know, we've talked about it before. Divers found it. Now under Jerry Carl, they are going to try to follow up with legislation. They've worked with a team of research from Southeastern University in Florida. This is coming from an article, New Old Plan, Efforts to Protect the Ancient Underwater Forest Continue with Carl. And there is a video of this and everything. And one of the things I found interesting was that there's furniture companies wanting to harvest the wood for furniture, you know.
Over my dead body.
What they call sinker cypress. But the video that I have seen is more stumps and debris. I don't see any logs or anything. And
they're logs.
Now, one of the things that really I found interesting was that Mr. Jones was a researcher at Southeastern University of Florida, said that small patches of larger forest kept getting exposed. And all he said, the forest now probably makes up a multi-kilometer square area that had previously been buried underneath sediment. They have found 5 or 6 other areas very close to this area that indeed look just like this underwater forest. So good luck with that. Let's protect it. Let's keep it a scuba diving recreational site with no souvenirs.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, more of the same. Officials unveil framework for $2.1 billion I-10 project with $2.50 tolls.
And how much was for the trucks? I think they are talking about upwards to $15 for coming across. But you know, this bridge project started out at $700,000. Then it went to 1.3 billion. Now they're talking about 2.3 billion. All right. The prisons that we just financed were 1.3 billion. And both of the MPOs, Mobile and Baldwin County, are all of our politicians now are totally agreeing with each other that we need to pay a toll. We hadn't had a vote on this, but they're agreeing that we need to have a toll, and this is what they're going to try to do. I find it interesting that Katie Britt, running for Mr.
Richard Shelby's seat.
Richard Shelby's seat, just
Congress, Senate.
For the Senate seat, she came back and pointed out that, look, I-10 has had destruction on the other side of Pensacola, Katrina all the way up to New Orleans. All of that was repaired. So she doesn't see that this should be paid with a toll. And I totally agree. So we'll see where it goes. And, in the beginning, the MPO president over in Baldwin County, Jack Burrell, said the one thing they wanted to be sure of was not to get any federal money. They were going to do it on their own. Well, you don't hear him saying that anymore.
Yeah, he's a buffoon.
Determines with what a new route across Mobile Bay might look like.
For the first time, both metropolitan planning organizations agree the only solution is to toll a new bridge, but at a lower price than previously discussed, and existing toll-free routes will remain free.
WKRG News 5's Blake Brown is live with a breakdown of all this for us. Blake?
That's right, Pete. This is finally gaining some momentum after all these years, but like you guys said, unfortunately a toll will have to be in place. Leaders on both sides of Mobile Bay are calling it the framework in order to get an I-10 Bayway Mobile River Bridge project back on the table. It's not the final plan, but members of the Eastern Shore Metropolitan Planning Organization and the Mobile MPO both agree tolling is the only solution.
Tolls will be temporary, and any additional funding we are able to secure will go towards paying down the debt.
Both organizations approving this framework, saying a $2.50 toll will be in place to go back and forth across the new bridge, but existing toll-free routes, including the tunnels and causeway, will remain open. Officials expecting the project to be added to the Long-Term Transportation Improvement Plan, or TIP, within the next 60 to 90 days. $125 million of federal funding will be used for a new bridge, along with $250 million officials expect to receive at the state level. Even though Spanish Fort Mayor Mike McMillan supports the new framework, he wants the Alabama Department of Transportation to take a good look at what this will do for the causeway.
Take a good swing at it.
Turning lanes, those kind of things, because when people are turning across traffic, there's going to be some safety issues going to have to be reviewed.
Mobile Mayor Sandy Stimson agrees improvements may be needed during the construction phase.
ALDOT recognizes that there will be greater use on the causeway, and it will require either more maintenance or some other attention so that it doesn't, so we don't wear it out sooner, let's say.
They don't have a clue.
Yeah, this is...
Now, if approved, this project would take 5 years to build this new bridge. Now, it is important to note that large trucks would be tolled about $15 or more with this new plan. For now, we're live on the causeway. I'm Blake Brown, WKRG News 5.
Now, here's one of the things, Harry, that I want to point out. We were talking about the prisons at 2.1 billion, the bridge they're saying $2 billion, but yet all you have to do is look at the back of Lagniappe, the current Lagniappe, and just look at the ad that's on the back about the gambling. We also need $1 billion for education. If we passed the gambling, we might have some money to do these projects. But without any type of income coming in, and forget about the marijuana thing, everybody's jockeying for a position that their own wallet is going to be, that's going to be who gets it. It's going to be this select group of people. But if we don't have any income, we're not going to go anywhere with this. And we're not going to, and I'm going to stick with Katie Britt on it. I don't think there should be a toll, period. You'll never forget the toll. Remember the penny tax?
Well, let's talk about where tax dollars are going. So remember last week I told you Joe Bonner was inducted into some secret society that I could not remember the name of, was the Alabama Academy of Honor. And You see him sitting there. So details on Joe Bonner's contract with South Alabama: $525,000 salary, car allowance, and more. So basically, what you've done is you have hired a rock star lobbyist to bring money to the University of South Alabama
at a very, very expensive price. Very expensive price.
Just so we're not kidding ourselves about his unique position to increase the education capacity of the university because of his years of experience. That's not what he's there for.
No.
Okay. Saving America's Amazon. I wanted to mention that again. There was a pretty good write-up about the coal ash again this time, and other environmental issues. So, Paul?
Yep.
Do you know what a sanctuary city is?
I know what they call sanctuary cities.
So it's supposed to be somewhere where immigration enforcement and ICE criminals aren't harassed by local governments, right?
In Alabama, it means a little different, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. So this week on the Jeff Poore Show, Tony Kennan, the mayor of Orange Beach, was on there talking about how well they did because they opened up early and had their Freedom Festival. Remember all that stuff?
Right.
Come on down. Just monumentally lucky that it happened between Delta and Omicron. I mean, there was just this lull there, and like the first time you pick up a bow and arrow and fire it and hit a bullseye, it's not skill, it's luck, man. You got real lucky. So anyway, he was saying that that Orange Beach should be considered a sanctuary city for conservatives. That he applauds the Florida governor for opening up before other states, but they were way behind us, and we should be a sanctuary city.
Well, we also need to thank Orange Beach for Mr. Elliott, State Senator Elliott.
Well, you can't get any better than that.
The tax man.
So, Raines, I'm assuming you read this Texas abortion ruling that came down last Friday. They're sending it down to a lower court to be adjudicated. I think they gave the aggrieved parties a roadmap to victory. The aggrieved parties being the people that are on the pro-abortion side.
Yeah.
And so then Texas begins to pull books from library shelves, which really makes me mad. And then Alabama lawmakers file bill mirroring Texas fetal heartbeat $10,000 bounty abortion law. And not to be outdone, California is now going to have a law where if you turn in your brother-in-law for having a clip with more than 10 that'll hold more than 10 rounds, you can get $10,000 for turning him in and making him a criminal out of him.
Everybody be turning everybody in.
Yeah, like I said, the police state and the Maoist bullshit will be complete.
Right.
So remember we told you about the Hubbard redactions. There was he had asked for early release, and it turns out the AG had been listening to him and all these lobbyists and lawmakers trying to massage the criminal code to allow him to get out early. And anyway, it was reported to the court, and now Mike's saying, no, I want an opportunity to explain to the judge why my apology was entirely truthful.
I think he should stay in there until Mr. Tom Albritton takes his place.
So speaking of Albritton's, Greg Albritton, and Raines, you need to go watch this if you missed it, Alabama Public Television on December 3rd. Mr. Albritton was on there telling us how he was going to change the face of Alabama and create 10,000 jobs throughout the Black Belt and other economically depressed areas by having full spread gaming, everything that Mississippi has, a lottery. It'll be a windfall. And, of course, he'll trade away every bit of political capital that he should be using to try to get this bridge built and all these other infrastructure needs that we have for his number one constituent, who are the Porch Creek Indians. Linda Blanchard announced her run for governor. There are several people in the race. Ain't nobody going to beat Meemaw, so we're not going to waste your time talking about it. There's been numerous reports after we've been talking about it for a couple of years that it looks like the Justice Department is going to come in and take over our prison system, no matter how much money we throw at it, Mr. Albritton. And we have a new commissioner here. What do you got?
This on the prison. No, go ahead on that.
No. Go for it.
Well, optimism wanes on Alabama prisons, as posted by Jeff Poore December 8th. But I picked it up. The DOJ amended a complaint against the state for alleged Eighth Amendment violations that described the state as being deliberately indifferent to the conditions within the state correctional facilities. And if you're a believer that the funding
that would be cruel and unusual punishment,
right? And if you're a believer that the funding that just got passed for the new prisons allocated by the Alabama legislature in the special session earlier this year would give the feds pause in pursuing a remedy through the federal courts, you are mistaken. The latest gesture suggests the opposite is true. And Jeff's article, he mentioned several things I think is very interesting. The Justice Department laid out a pattern of violence within the system according to the report that was pervasive and systemic. One aspect of the complaint alleged the homicide rate inside the Alabama prison system in 2018 was more than 7 times the national average. Think we got a problem, folks? This is your...
No, it's just a torture chamber of rape and violence.
This is your tax dollars. So if you think the $1.3 billion prison construction plan is going to hold this off, it's probably not. We're probably going to have to hand it over to the feds. Now, one thing that I see that Jeff mentions 2 or 3 times is when the legislature convenes in January, figuring out a short-term solution under the new prison facilities are up and running. At minimum, ought to be on the calendar. There is nothing that they have planned other than saying, okay, we're going to put this money, we're going to build new prisons, and it's going to be 2 and 3 years before they're up and running. There's no short-term remedy to go along with the prison conditions. And unfortunately, we have not heard much about immediate remedies from any of the policymakers in the upper echelons of the state government. The immediate problems must be addressed to satisfy the federal government, not Alabama. So here's another one of those things sitting on the sideline. Let's talk about building a $2.1 billion bridge when we got $1.2 billion going into prisons and no idea of how to take care of the situation without just throwing money at it. That's not going to work, folks.
It's another indication that you have a whole leadership class that has no idea what they're doing.
Correct. Absolutely.
These elected officials that you've put up here don't have a clue.
And if the feds get a hold of the prisons, get ready for a lot of people to be let out of jail. Ask California how that worked out.
Yeah. So let's talk about COVID for a minute. We got a new variant, Omicron. It's immune evasive. Alabama confirms the first variant. I guess that was 3 days ago. Fauci says we have a moving target with what fully vaccinated means, so you're going to have to get a booster before you can fly or do any of that kind of stuff. And I thought while we're talking about medicine, UAB is on the cutting edge of treatment and research into the coronavirus, and I thought we'd talk about the U.S. medical schools. Enrollment is the largest and most diverse class in history in 2021. And I happened to be watching Alabama Public Television this morning, and I was watching the Scholars Bowl competition, Hoover High School versus Alma Bryant. So this is Hoover over here.
Right.
Now, notice something about the ethnicity of these children?
I don't see a lot of gringos.
No. And look over here. So the score ended up it was like me and Reigns on Jeopardy. We're either going to get all the money or we're going to have zero at the end, right?
270 to 40, yeah.
So anyway, this kid right here is a stone cold killer. I would not play any trivia game with him.
He's that
Capel,
good.
oh man, he answered every question. I thought it was his turn to answer questions.
Yeah.
He kept answering all the questions. Hell no, it was everybody on the panel could throw in, but he would get them. They'd say something like, what's the capital of Belize? And it was
yeah,
just fast. And
these kids. Full disclosure, I was the captain of the Ocean Springs High School Scholars Bowl team, and just to further my absolute pedigree of nerdery, we were actually on the televised out of New Orleans. WYES used to televise the Scholars Bowl, and we went over there and took on Isidore Newman High School and completely beat the doors off of them, just like Hoover did with this bunch. I want to say our final score was somewhere in the 400s, and we just because the Scholars Bowl, you don't just get points for ringing in, you also have discussion questions, if that's still the format. But you have discussion questions which can count for up to like 10 points each, and those are group questions, and you get 30 seconds to come up with an answer, and that's why you can get these really high scores. If you get all those discussion questions right, bingo, it's a shutout.
Well, I will say that there were many questions that they could not answer.
Yeah.
I mean, just nobody could. And I was sitting there going,
well, the thing about Scholars Bowl
Google
that makes it different from a lot of quiz shows is that none of it is pop culture. The Scholars Bowl is built around things you should have learned in school.
Right. Okay, so let me say this. These kids over here did horrible on like children's books and those kind of things, but mathematics, geography, all that kind of I'm just saying.
Right.
I could tell what they were focused on in their studies or whatever just by watching it. Anyway, interesting little thing. So, on the lighter side, a Florida man was banned from United Airlines after wearing a thong as a mask in protest. That's we go from one level of sophistication to another.
Right. They didn't say where he was from. Oh, it was Florida. Okay, well, you can understand that.
And COVID has killed. So this is the front page of the New York Times, kind of iconic. You see the people in Kentucky over on the left.
Right.
And then the byline is, COVID has killed one of every 100 older Americans. The death toll nears 800,000 overall. 3/4 are over 65.
That's kind of scary.
It's very elegant, this disease, isn't it? Takes out the weaker buffalo.
806,000.
So 50.7 million infected in the U.S. with SARS-CoV-2 with 806,167 deaths. And no one has resigned, nor has there been a guillotining, as I suggested. Pfizer has a new pill, of course, that they're going to hopefully you bought Pfizer just like all the members of Congress did right before this thing kicked off. And like I said, everyone gets another shot at having tinnitus like I've had since my first injection.
Well, I don't have to worry about that. I had that since I came back from Vietnam.
I keep looking for the Omicron version of this. It is not on the CDC website yet. And, of course, we told you this a couple weeks ago. If you're out there hunting for deer, be careful because almost all of the white-tailed deer are passing COVID back and forth.
Oh, dear.
And give it to your dog and your cat and all that stuff. So here are the hot spots by county. Last week, hot spots by county. This week, Baldwin County had no deaths in the last 14 days, 592 total, and 90 new cases this week. So we're holding at moderate transmission levels. The only you touched on a little bit before, Katie Britt came out and told us all about what she thought about the bridge. Mo Brooks is more worried about national issues and hasn't even, from my perspective, hasn't started his campaign. I haven't seen much except MAGA Mo signs.
Well, one thing I noticed too, all that happened up in Kentucky. Raines, have you seen McConnell on anything?
Or Rand Paul?
I mean, where the hell are they?
Senators have been surprisingly absent from the national stage.
Where are they, man? I mean, this is his state, and I haven't heard a word.
They're in Washington, of course,
right.
And your duly elected senators pretty much forget about your state and the people in it when they move to Washington, and they become transfixed on national issues. And I'll say even the representatives that I approve of, it's still the same. I want to do right by my home state, but I'm doing it at a national scale, so I'm not so boots on the ground with my home constituency unless it's an election year.
Yeah.
Right now, because we have a Democrat in the White House and the president is visiting, you don't get Mitch McConnell's and Rand Paul's that show up to presidential visits for a president that's not in their party. They'll show up after if they haven't showed up before. And if they do, it'll be a glad hand. It'll be to check in with their local offices and, toss some paper towels.
Well, they need.
So we got a
seriously.
So we got a new player, guys.
Or Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
All right, so let's watch this real quick. I want to remind everybody that we have a new player in the Mo Brooks Katie Britt race.
You shouldn't have come here. This is our war, not yours.
300,000 dead and counting. That's not a war, Mr. Ito. It's genocide.
These people, they have no food. We can either help, or we can sit back and watch a country destroy itself on CNN.
Rangers, Deltas, today we go.
Name?
Blackburn.
Date of birth?
2/27/75.
I was trained to fight. You trained to fight, Sergeant?
I was trained to make a difference.
So guess what? You're going out today.
What?
It's what you wanted, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
Just remember when everybody else is shooting the same direction. You ever shot at anybody before?
No, Sergeant.
Me neither.
Once that first bullet goes past your head, politics go right out the window.
Hey, baby, it's me. You there? Pick up if you're there. I love you, baby.
RPG! Hold on! 6 Spartans gone down!
Got a Black Hawk down. Black Hawk
My men are surrounded by thousands of Somali militia. I need help now.
Where's the rescue squad?
We're in.
I can't do it.
It's what you do right now that makes a difference.
People ask me, why do you do it, man? They want to understand it's about the men next to you.
Don't let that man crawl! Somebody help that man!
That's all it is.
No one gets left behind, you know that.
Nobody asks to be a hero. It just sometimes turns out that way.
That's the person who's entered the race. He was the pilot of the helicopter that was shot down, the first helicopter that was shot down. And was actually taken prisoner by Mohammed Farah.
Hilariously, we leave no man behind, but the guy who's running for Senate in Alabama was left behind and was a prisoner of war for some warlord for a pretty good amount of time.
Mohammed
right,
Farah Adid was his name.
Yep.
Warlord. Interesting side note about Black Hawk Down: the character that Ewan McGregor portrayed in the movie, the desk clerk who got
Sergeant
called out.
It's not Eversman. That was
no, I can't remember his name because they've stricken it from the books. He ended up getting out of the army and became a pretty prolific child molester.
Oh my God!
And got his medals taken away and his awards taken away, and they basically wrote him out of all the Black Hawk Down stuff. And the the army, it was just like, holy crap, could this have happened to a less prolific person from the U.S. Army? But yep.
Now where's Mike? Where's Mike from? In Alabama,
Iowa. I don't know where he's from.
No, come on, man.
So once he mustered out, he got into the military industrial complex and made a great deal of money. So now he's a multimillionaire and he wants to run for.
But I mean, where is he from in Alabama? I'm living in Alabama. You don't know.
He's from Huntsville.
He's up near Huntsville.
That's what I thought too.
Technology. Yeah. So anyway, here are the new polls now that Mike Durant came in and took 16% of the field.
Well,
that's a chunk, man.
I'd like to see him beat Mo Brooks at least.
Well, he's not going to beat Mo Brooks, but Katie Britt is.
Yeah.
And while this may look rosy for Mo, it's really not because she's on the march.
Yeah.
Right. She's got some.
That's the worst thing you can have. This is a nightmare scenario for Katie Britt because those votes aren't going. The people that are going to vote for Mo Brooks are going to vote for Mo Brooks no matter what, and all that Mike Durant's doing is
split
is siphoning votes from Katie Britt.
Yeah.
And that's a nightmare scenario for her. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hallway conversation at some point where
there you go.
Mike Durant offered a federal job if he bows out of this race.
There you go.
So anyway, Brooks looks to redeem himself with Trump amid campaign struggles. And so that's his plan, man. Trump, Trump, Trump. I'm the Trumpiest.
No mo, no mo, no mo.
Okay. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, well, we got Damn the Torpedoes.
Go for it.
The
The
Lanyap
News
this
Desert.
week by Rob Holbert. Heard that Rob's doing a lot better. He's got one more operation, and maybe he'll be back as strong as he was. But his is avoiding the news desert, and this is something that I have particularly paid attention to. The news deserts are places that have lost their newspapers and no longer have anyone covering their stories. Now, in Alabama, we got some news deserts in the fact that they don't cover all the news that is out there. Like, for example, the Tom Albritton issue. But really, this is drying up all over the country, or different types of news agencies. And when you think about the Press Register, when Lanyap started 20 years ago, the Press Register was going and blowing. I mean, and you never would have imagined a scenario where they were going to not have a daily newspaper in Mobile. And Lanyap actually started as an alternative newspaper, essentially meaning that they were trying to cover the things that the big guys with the main paper were leaving behind. But what really happened was that AL.com was leaving everything behind. So, I mean, it's changed the whole complexion. I mean, some of the articles at Lanyap,
Connie Baggett, Guy Busby,
Right.
all the regular string reporters around here, they're all gone.
And if you're interested in what's really going on around here, it is Lanyap. You're going to find more in there than anything else. And of course, Rob does his best here, saying that he knows we're sick and tired of hearing about it. But subscriptions to lanyap.com are 21 cents a day, or less than a cup of coffee. That's damn sure less than a cup of coffee. So, think about it. Get a subscription. You don't want to get a subscription. You don't want to get it online. You can get a hard copy just about all over Mobile and Baldwin counties. But you will see articles in there that are not covered by the Birmingham Press Register, which now controls all of the Mobile news. I hadn't quite figured out how Birmingham is reporting on Mobile, but that's where we are now.
All right, so Rain's gun violence in Mobile this past weekend, they responded to 9 gun-related incidents in 63 hours, and we're on target to be the most violent year in Mobile in 2 decades.
That's why they want to build that bridge so everybody can get out of Mobile to come to Baldwin County.
Yeah, and so anyway, there was an opinion piece this week in the Washington Post. We've talked about it before. The constitutional sheriffs, is everybody familiar with that? These are a group that has been designated as extremist, dangerous, and unconstitutional. A small subset of the nation's 3,000 sheriffs are claiming power not only to enforce the law, but ultimately arbitrators of what the law is.
That should scare the hell out of everybody.
Yeah, not only are we in a police state, but we're in a police state where the police don't have to answer to judges.
Right. Baldwin County, if you're a police officer and go to court, you ain't got to worry about it. They'll believe anything you say.
And talk about calling on the Fury a couple of times this week on my spirit animal. I had a client that was very lucky that he had a judge this week that did his job and threw out some charges that they couldn't possibly be maintained by the state against my client. And that is the reason that all of you should be against this constitutional sheriff's idea.
Of a bunch of retards I wouldn't trust with a potato gun.
And another reason that I've been saying that the Constitution of 1901 should be thrown out, Mr. Rip can tell you what happens when you sue a constitutional law in this state, can't you, Mr. Rip?
Oh, yeah.
They cover for him.
And they have no sense of humor.
None. Okay, so I'm going to predicate the Rip Report with some of my own comment, okay?
All right.
So back in 2010 or 2006, I guess, there was an idea hatched that in a ballot initiative put to the people of Alabama in the form of a constitutional amendment that said that Baldwin County, because of its unique environmental nature, we will come up with our own scheme to regulate private utilities here in Baldwin County, taking them out from under the purview of the Public Service Commission.
Scheme being the key word.
Now, so before this, everyone who lived here in Baldwin County will remember that, yeah, people went out on raw property and they built them a house or whatever, but the maximum density in Baldwin County to get your property to PERT so that your septic tank will function properly is about an acre. So that was the maximum density you could put on a piece of property. And when you wanted to develop and you wanted to do higher density than one house per acre, you obviously had to do it adjacent to a municipality and go through their subdivision regulations, go through their wants and needs, satisfy the city, make sure it's congruent with their comprehensive plan and how they want to grow. And this new scheme whereby we're going to have this other regulatory agency looking over Baldwin County Sewer Services back, well, guess what? Nobody has put any scheme in place. So, Paul, do you think it was the intent of all the people who voted for that constitutional amendment that no one would regulate Baldwin County Sewer Service?
Absolutely
Of
not.
course not.
Absolutely
So my
not.
New Year's resolution, if we're going to get around to that, is I'm going to one more time dust off this constitutional amendment, take it to the Baldwin County Commission, who I believe is charged with coming up with a scheme to regulate Baldwin County Sewer Service, and demand, they're all running again, right?
Right.
Let's demand that they do their job. Brad Hicks is their county attorney. Get him to write an opinion letter on it. What do you mean, what do you do? How come I'm the guy that ain't getting paid and I know more about it than anybody in Baldwin County?
They keep kicking the can down the road. It's going to catch up with them.
So you do that. You have uncontrolled development that's not fettered by, the city of Fairhope Planning Commission or anything else. And then you have a city like Spanish Fort who doesn't even have their own infrastructure. The only game in town is Baldwin County Sewer Service, right? All their residents are beholden to them. But there's nobody to complain to if they have sorry service or if their rates go up.
And
so how can that be?
And they can go up at will. They can go up to any time they want.
So just like we saw when we had this asinine idea that we're going to build this toll bridge, and the people rose up and said hell no. And so one more time here in Baldwin County, so the first one reigns is an ordinance by the city of Daphne, an ordinance to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of its citizens relating to petitions to rezone or pre-zone land to either R7 apartments, mid-rise condominiums, townhouses, PUDs, planned unit developments where the proposed use will include either apartments, mid-rise condominiums, or townhouses. So Daphne's put a moratorium on apartments. Now Fairhope has a similar issue going on. So, Paul, I'm going to let you pick up with Not So Fast by Gabe Tynes.
Right. Fairhope joins Daphne with a development moratorium. Now, very few people stay in or have the patience to watch politics as long as I have in the Fairhope area. This is the second time that they've had a moratorium. This one's about a year overdue. And what people need to understand is Mayor Kant, who was in 16 years, did very little, if no infrastructure whatsoever. They improved a sewer station there for $10 million. Everybody approved it. They rebuilt the sewer system at the plant, never laid 1 inch of pipe going to it, any infrastructure. That ended up costing $13 million. Most of that's down the tube. But now the city of Fairhope is having a total backfire on what they were hoping was going to be a surge of cash money for the city, and that is that the current mayor and after Mayor Kant for 16 years, then we had Mayor Wilson come in for 4 years, and in her 4 years she got up to like $8 or $10 million in grants for sewer infrastructure and stuff like that. That is going on now. And this current council will be lucky if they can complete that. Also, the current council and the current mayor worked under Tim Kant when there was no infrastructure. So now the city planner, Hunter Simmons, is telling the council that there are other considerations that will help with their overflow right now, and that's including zoning districts. I can tell you right now, folks, if you're in zoning district 8 or zoning district 37, you need to be zoned, because what can happen is in an unzoned area, a developer can come in, comply with the county regulations, develop something, and then annex into Fairhope. Also, mobile homes.
Or Daphne. Remember
Correct.
the big technology park they built outside the city and then annexed it later?
Right. And then also in Zone 8, in the planning Zone 8 that they're talking about, there are a lot of trailers, mobile homes in that area. If a storm comes, knocks that down, and it's gone, under Fairhope's regulations, it can't be replaced. Okay? In the zoned areas, you're going to have a little bit more protection as far as replacing it. Now, one of the things that I thought was just hilarious, and I mean, when you hear these statements, you have to ask yourself, we have a new president there in Fairhope, Mr. Jimmy Conyers, who's a banker.
Council president,
who is a banker. Good time to be a banker with all this development. But his quote is this: "We are blessed to live in a community for the second time in 5 years where we've had to contemplate a moratorium." Folks, you're having to contemplate a moratorium because nobody down there is doing their damn job. And also, Conyers emphasized that completing applications will not be affected and that the moratorium will likely not result in a noticeable decrease in ongoing and planned construction around Fairhope. And
they got 200 building permits out there, and they're all still good because they made application before this moratorium.
This is one of the things, folks, that I witnessed. I'd go to these meetings, planning and zoning, and they would approve somebody for a subdivision. So you would think, well, hell, that guy's going to build a subdivision, right? Well, he might not do anything for 4 or 5 years. There's no sunset clause whatsoever on the permit. So he comes back 4 or 5 years later and says, okay, now I'm ready to build. Well, that's what's going on in Fairhope, all over Fairhope.
A lot of that happened in the 50s.
Right. And in Fairhope, let me mention that you have councilmen and the municipal judge, who are developers, taking advantage of this situation as it goes. Now, one other thing that is in the District 37, Elizabeth Gable Wilson was telling the council how overwhelming response that she got on the petition for zoning and so on and so forth. And what she is trying to do is that she would like to have a moratorium placed now on all subdivisions and land use projects. Now, this
just like everybody else that was the last son of a bitch to move here.
Well,
that's unreasonable and ignorant.
Well, the other thing too, the point of this is too, the Lawrence Road. They have a massive project out there that they're trying to stop. You're not going to stop that by changing zoning now. You may stop the next project, but this project,
and the city's not going to do this because it would be considered a taking, and it would be just like a lawsuit, like the damn Dice Triangle.
Correct. And if you want to point fingers, folks, and
it's your leadership,
you screwed up.
It's generational screw ups by the people that you elected. The reason you can't swim at the Fairhope Pier is because you got the worst sewer plant in Alabama,
and I damn sure wouldn't.
And the most beautiful downtown it's sitting on top of.
Right, and I damn sure wouldn't eat the fish. So, and by the way, they have the $6.2 million waterfront project that they have been teetering with for over a year, and nothing has happened since the last administration.
The great negotiator,
and then at the same time, we saw Jack Burrell jump ship as council president. Makes you wonder why he jumped ship, because he saw the ship was sinking.
Because he knew this moratorium was coming, and the people that support him don't like that kind of stuff. So let's watch this real quick.
All right, Kelly, new at 10. One city on the Eastern Shore has now pressed pause on its own rapid growth and development. Tonight, Fairhope City officials unanimously voted to approve a new moratorium proposal on subdivision and building construction. NBC 15's Corey Pippen was in that meeting. He has the story tonight from Fairhope City Hall.
Residents and city officials are concerned about Fairhope's ability to keep up with the area's rapid growth. Tonight's moratorium means no new development just outside city limits for at least a year. With new subdivisions, housing complexes,
for Publix,
and businesses popping up around every corner,
$3 stores.
Signs of growth in Fairhope are clear, with no indication.
5 new mini storages
Raising red flags
everywhere.
For both residents.
1,400 new apartments already permitted.
Most of what's happening outside of our city limits in the county, within the ETJ, that's where we're just seeing the most rampant growth.
Tonight, Fairhope's elected leaders heard from concerned locals on a proposed moratorium to halt development just outside city limits, but within the city's planning jurisdiction.
This moratorium will kind of give us the opportunity to kind of scale back and see what we're going to do as far as our plan is concerned, and it fits right along with our comprehensive plan.
No one in attendance opposed the idea, and city officials agreed the area's rapid growth is outpacing their ability to keep up with much-needed upgrades to city services, including utilities and transportation infrastructure.
Frankly, not only the planning department, but utilities, infrastructure, just having a really difficult time keeping up.
In the end, the city council's
for 25
decision
years
was unanimous, each explaining their reasoning and voting to approve the moratorium in hopes of getting a hold on development for what they say will be responsible growth.
So it seems like we're in a hurry tonight. We're not. This is something probably maybe slightly overdue, not long overdue.
City officials say the moratorium will not impact projects already in the pipeline. It's expected to go into effect next Wednesday. In Fairhope tonight, I'm Corey Pippen, NBC 15 News.
One reason that they're having this problem in Fairhope is because this is their 4th or 5th comprehensive plan in 20 years. Well, if you've got a comprehensive plan that's no good for any more than 3 to 4 years, this is the type of problem that you run into here. Exactly what's going on now. And remember, private sewer, all this is, you got Baldwin County Sewer running any way that it wants to. The county, the commission, municipalities, no one's doing anything. The only one raising hell on the air is us.
So, Raines, any of this blowing your skirt up?
I understand zoning. I understand what happens when you don't do zoning. You end up with sprawl. And you've got to have smart growth or you're going to end up too big. And your infrastructure is not going to be able to handle it. Your residents are going to start moving out. And you lose not just the culture, but the potential of an area.
Quality of life.
So the Catalyst cabal came into power. They, in the 2010 reorganizational, what I like to call the Red Wedding county commission meeting, they fired a third of the staff, including all the damn planners.
Deorganization.
Then in 2000, and including the in-house attorneys, and they went and hired Baldwin County Sewer Services lobbyists to be the attorney for the county.
That was smart.
Just so you, any of y'all that are following along. And so then in 2011, the county threw away a $300,000 comprehensive plan that the staff, residents, everyone had spent 5 years cobbling together. And we went back to the subdivision regulations from 1981.
And that's exactly what's happening.
And so finally the people have had enough and they're raising hell. And, it's like Gore Vidal said, when they've had enough, the people march. And that's what's going on in Baldwin County.
Right.
Did you want to talk about an update on the boating accident?
Oh, yeah, the silent boating accident that involved what we are allegedly hearing is Judge Norton's son, who was driving a boat. And this was November 22nd. Bunch of kids in there, all juveniles. It's 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning in Mobile Bay driving a boat. That tells you a hell of a lot right there. Anyway, they hit a pier, and we're getting conflicting stories as to what authorities have done or could do at the time. We're hearing that the Fairhope police were just notified of a damaged pier, And then the next report we get is that Judge Norton himself injected himself into the situation, which would be another whole problem right there. And the next thing I hear is that the kids took the injured individual and took him to the hospital themselves. So it makes you wonder what type of investigation is going on. Now, you know, you're going to have accidents with kids all the time, but this has now gotten to where it involves a sitting judge and his son and possibly interfering with the crime scene. As I understand, the kid is still in the hospital. God bless him. I hope everything turns out all right. But this is a void in news. Look around, folks. Are you reading anything about this? If this was kids that didn't have prominent families, you'd be reading about it all. Bunch of reckless kids doing this and that and everything else. But now privilege will get you somewhere. There's also a podcast out there, a gentleman out of Florida that's put that out about this accident and the information he got from the Fairhope police. With all these allegations swirling around, you would think somebody would clarify something, but nope, it's as quiet as a mouse.
As it should be, because there are juveniles involved.
Well, correct, but the judge's participation is something that needs to be addressed. And we will be following up on it and trying to knock on doors to see what we can find out.
There was something I wanted to throw in on the last story. They were talking about the extraterritorial planning jurisdiction. That seems to be where all the applications are coming from.
Right.
And if everyone will recall, last legislative session, Chris Elliott introduced a bill that would do away with extraterritorial planning and police jurisdictions for almost every municipality. And all that's still up in the air. Each municipality has to negotiate with the county who's going to enforce inside that 1 to 3 mile radius around the city.
Right. So thanks to Elliott, you got that part, and also remember Elliott is a tax.
So now we can forum shop. Where do we have better friends, the county or the city?
Really, if I'd pick the county over the city, to tell you the truth.
So we're going to tee this up next time. I'm going to do some research, and I'm going to find out if these guys have a contract with the county or exactly how they're paid. And let me say that Baldwin Court Services does a good job. All their I think Jonathan does a good job hiring his staff. They're all very professional, well demeanored, well dressed. Just you can spot his employees when they're in the courtroom, right? Got no problem with the job that they do, but
shouldn't have both jobs.
Well, if it is in fact a no bid contract, we just want some explanation of how that it's been enforced since 2008.
Right.
The Porch Creek Indians bought a casino gaming operation in Chicago. The Hangout Fest is back on range. You might want to come down here for that.
What about that Tar and Feather Award?
Oh, we'll get there.
All right.
Mr. Rip wanted to remind everybody that the District 8 zoning will be on the ballot when, Mr.
February 15th.
February 15th. And you see,
pay attention, folks. Show up.
Fairhope's in black. It's just
right. You do not want to go into Fairhope. You do not want to go into Fairhope.
Instead of following my retain and explain, like they're doing instead of tearing down 500-year-old churches in Great Britain, they were just putting a plaque there that says, and by the way, this guy was a slave trader. But no, nothing so grand for Raphael Sims, one of the most storied captains in American history. He has been relegated to a undistinguished corner in the History Museum of Mobile.
Stuck in the corner.
Yep. And I promise I'll get there. So, Raines, did you hear this? Not only is Paul in good shape in other areas, these damn things are actually good for your mental acuity.
Oh, yeah, I take one every night.
So December 15th marks the 10-year anniversary of the death of Christopher Hitchens. I wanted to reiterate that. And so now we come to the Tar and Feather Awards.
Which is justly deserved.
Well, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about it, Mr. Rip.
This is the Tar and Feather Award going to Mr. Chris Elliott, our state senator, who we also call the tax man, whose favorite buddy is the sheriff. And he has been absolutely a pain in the ass since the very beginning that he got in there. By the way, we were just talking about him a minute ago when he rolled back the municipality thing. It's not that.
Yeah, we need to update his nomination here, because where is he? Let's find him real quick. There's Albritton asleep.
Right.
Except when Indian stuff comes up, somebody hits his shot collar.
Right. Then
he goes into. Here we go.
Yeah.
Senator Chris Elliott against the passage of the Alabama Health Freedom Act and ignoring the will of the people during the second special session for working to pass SB 9. Which was a bill that provided no penalties for violators and provided no further protections for Alabama citizens than was already allowed by federal law for conspiring with lobbyists to cater to the wants and desires of the Business Council of Alabama.
Let me repeat that again. For conspiring with lobbyists to cater to the wants and desires of the BCA. Let that register, folks.
Hey.
Chris Elliott, that's the one you do not vote for coming up in the
Okay, well,
midterm.
let me tell you how perverse what just came out of your mouth is.
I know.
The Business Council of Alabama was led by Katie Britt, and she championed the $100 million gas tax increase, and Chris was one of her most staunch supporters. Full disclosure.
God, I hate
we
to
tell
hear
the
that.
damn truth on this podcast.
Yep.
Is range?
Absolutely.
There you are. I thought your camera had gone too. I don't know what the heck's going on with ours. And I thought I would throw in I'd throw in a little family history here. So you do realize that all of the creeks had to be removed after the Treaty of Fort Jackson, right?
Moved from Alabama.
Yes, except there were a few creeks around here who were allowed to stay by the Alabama legislature. And one of them was my grandfather, James Earl, and the other one was David Tate. And so do you know what's on Mr. Tate's property right now? The damn Indian casino.
Oh, really?
Somehow our 10,000 acres got foolishly squandered on whores and whiskey.
You don't have any mixed blood Indian in there anywhere?
Me?
Yeah. Well, are you getting a check?
Hell no. They let us stay. They said, y'all are white people and you can stay. Screwed me out of generations of money. Yeah.
Really?
Yep. And so, Raines, this one's for you, pal. For $10 million, Randy Quaid says he'll come stand in your front yard as himself in a white bathrobe and a big hose, smoking a cigar, drinking a beer.
I believe he will, too.
I don't need to spend $10 million on that. I get referred to as that guy in my neighborhood all the time.
I bet you do.
Yeah, really.
I think I could do it for a lot less and bring the same level of authenticity.
We have him wandering all around Baldwin County, too.
All right, guys. Well, we've reached the end of our time together today. What are you doing this weekend, Raines?
Hunkering down. We're just kind of playing it safe. We're going to an ugly Christmas sweater party tonight at one of my wife's friends. I have a ugly Christmas sweater that says Die Hard is a Christmas movie.
I agree.
And she has a Christmas
so is
sweater
Iron
that
Man
says
3.
Jolly as fuck on it. Huh?
I said so is Iron Man 3.
Die Hard 3.
Iron Man 3 is a Christmas
Iron Man
movie.
3, there's a lot of them, but Die Hard is the penultimate Christmas movie.
I couldn't agree more. It has all the elements I like. Viking bad guys, explosions, and bare-breasted women. Is that your trifecta for a good action movie?
It should be
pretty
included.
Close, yeah.
Pretty close. All right. Well, y'all have a good weekend. We'll see you next time.
All right.
I don't sit around asking myself, why me? And if I did, the cosmos wouldn't bother to favor me with a reply. I wouldn't even say, why not?